to introduce you to UCINET, whether you're using it for the very first time or you just need a refresher on what some of the tabs are here. So your version of UCINET, now depending on the version that you're using, or if you're using it in a Windows-based machine on Wine or some other conditions. For the most part, this white space in the center is going to look about the same. So the first thing I'm going to draw your attention to is how to cite UCINET. So you never know who your reviewers are. Always a great idea to cite the computational tools that you're using for your analysis. That's going to ground your research so that others can repeat what you've done. And also the algorithms within UCINET will be done a certain way and others will have an idea of what algorithm you used if you cite your software. The next thing you see below that is where to find an online tutorial for UCINET. It's the Hanneman and Riddle tutorial. You can also go to the help menu. It's about the fourth item down, and that'll give you a direct link there. The next thing on the list is the Borgatti, Everett, and Johnson textbook. It came out in 2013 and it's a terrific overview of social network analysis as a methodology. It's going to speak directly to UCINET and give you some overviews of some of the things that you can be doing with UCINET. The next thing on the list is you'll see who this copy of UCINET is registered to. When you download UCINET, it's going to be free for the first 90 days, and then you'll need to go to the analytictechnologies.com website and get your registration code, which you'll go to the help menu and register it right here. Attention to is where your UCINET file directory is. So the file directory that I'm using right now is located at the bottom of the screen. To set up yours, you're going to click on this little yellow folder and you're going to want to make sure that it's pointing to your UCINET data files. It may already be doing that. This data files folder is going to have the CampNet, Paget, and several other data sets that I'm going to talk about in some of the future demonstrations. This is also going to be the place that it's going to save any UCINET data files that you create. The average path that you're going to find is that in the program files on your computer, there's going to be a folder called Analytic Technologies, and then probably UCINET 6, and within that you'll find your UCINET data files. The next thing, especially if you're using a machine that has a lot of permissions, UCINET is going to create some files where each one of your outputs are going to be stored and some other temporary files. If you go to Options and then Scratch Folder and open that, especially if you're using a virtual machine, you may need to use the Users My Documents folder or just create a new space for those files to go. If you're using a home machine with no permissions or firewalls, you may be fine with wherever that folder is at this point in time. Through some of the submenu buttons and icons that you see in UCINET. I'm going to start off by teaching you how to input a matrix into UCINET, and then I'll get into the DL editor. So first, you're going to see your submenu buttons give you access to all the routines in UCINET, and they're grouped into File, Data, Transform, Tools, Network, and so on. You will become more familiar with these as you start working through some routines in UCINET. The Data tab has a way that you can import Excel data either in a DL type format or a matrix. You can also import different types of text files. So you can, if you're using Gephi or if you're using Node Excel, you can actually export your data as a raw matrix file and import it this way. I'm also going to talk through how you might just copy and paste that data, which is a little bit simpler and will reduce errors. You can also export your data once you already have it in UCINET into any one of these formats so that you can open it up in another tool. If you look at the icons in that second row, the first one is actually just an exit. You can also use the X icon. The next one is an Excel editor. If you're using UCINET on Mac, you might not actually see that Excel editor if you're using something like Wine to show your data. So the Excel matrix editor is very useful. I use it most often for actually looking at my outputs. So every time you run something, like if I was running multiple measures of centrality, I can then go ahead and open up my output and use this A to Z sort and filter to take a look at who has the most centrality, who has the least centrality, and then I can copy and paste in that way. The next icon is the matrix spreadsheet editor. So if you're using Wine, you still have access to this, so you can still do most of the things that are or all of the things that you would need to when manipulating matrices in UCINet. You'll see there's a note here that column A and row 1 are for your labels only. So if you don't have any, just leave those blank. Your data is going to start in cell B2. The top uh, um, space here is mostly just going to be blank most of the time. So we have some functions here that are going to be really useful when you're working with matrices. Most of them very similar to Excel, selecting, inserting, deleting columns. There's ways to quickly transform your matrix. So if you needed to transpose a matrix so that all of your columns are rows and rows are columns and the data affiliated with that, it's going to flip your matrix right along the diagonal. You can symmetrize a directed data set to be an undirected data set, or dichotomize your values if you're working with a valued data set. If you're inputting your data here and you've written in all of your columns and you just wanted to put ones where there was a presence of a tie, you can quickly select that you want to fill in all of the blanks with zeros. Also, if you have some missing data and you've left that blank, so you've already filled in all of your ones and zeros, but some of them have actual your missing has counterpart. That's different than transposing or symmetrizing your data. So if I symmetrize my data, all of the data would then have its symmetric counterpart. Here it's only going to fill in whatever's blank. You also have the option of copying your row labels to the columns. This is a really good idea to make sure that you don't accidentally fill in Bill with one L as a row and Bill with two L's as a column. And there's several other options that are useful. I'm just going to open up a data set so you have an idea of what this looks like. And I'm going to open the CampNet data set. And you're going to see that as soon as I drop that file, UCINET creates two files. So every time you save a data set, it's going to create a #D, a #H file. And you're going to need to email both of those if you were ever to share your data with somebody else, or if you want to save it to a flash drive and open it somewhere else. When I open a data set, it doesn't matter which one of these two files I open. So here is the CampNet dataset. Each one of these individuals attended a workshop, and then they were asked to list 3 individuals that they spent the most time with. So you'll see zeros for the absence of a tie and ones for the presence of a tie. If I were to have just created this, I would go to File, Save As, and I would save it as a UCINET dataset, and it would create both the D and H file for me. So that concludes looking at the spreadsheet editor. Matrix, I just showed you a number of different ways that you can either import it, you can create it within the Excel spreadsheet editor, the matrix editor. You can simply copy and paste it from your Excel spreadsheet into that spreadsheet editor. If you have a data list, you're going to have a slightly different format to your data, which is why you would use that fourth icon over, which is the DL editor. And to get a better sense of what that means, I'm actually going to open up a data set so you know what I'm talking about. So first I'm going to open up that CampNet data set. And when we look at it as a full matrix, we see all of the ones and zeros, and it's just a typical matrix format, and you can do that in the DL editor. Another way of looking at this would be to consider it as a node list. So as I mentioned, each person that was in the CampNet dataset was asked to list 3 people that they connected with while they were at the workshop. For that reason, each one of these egos, which is in the first column, has listed 3 alters. So in this case, every single node is going to be listed in the first column as an ego, and each person that they connect with is going to be listed as an alter. So if there were differing amounts of people that they connected with throughout the week, this wouldn't be a nice rectangle. It would look a little bit messier, which is fine. That would be a more typical pattern. Another way to view our data is as an edge list. So this is the file format that NodeXL works with. So if I had a data set in UCINET, I might open it up this way and copy and paste these 2 rows into NodeXL if I wanted to then use the visualization software there. This is a case where Holly connects with 3 people, and so Holly connects with Pam, Holly connects with Pat, and Holly also links to Dawn. And so for each person, they will be listed as an ego and an alter, but it's just the node list. You can also look at this as a value data set. So if they were different values, if Holly connected with Pam but rated that a certain value, we might list that there. And so that would be one way to add in values as we go along. I recommend if you're using a NodeXL to gather Twitter or other social media data, that you actually don't use this EdgeList1 format, but instead use EdgeList23, which allows you to input a node, and then a relation, which is really useful if you're going to preserve whether or not the relation was who tweeted at whom, who replied to whom, or who mentioned whom. So it's going to be a similar file format where you'll have the one Twitter handle, another Twitter handle, and then you'll actually copy and paste the row that mentions whether or not they tweet or mention one another. The other options that you have here are to look at triples or value triples, where you can add both that relation and the value. And again, this is just the way that you would actually load the UCINET data file. If you're going to copy and paste from Excel, I would first select that I want to use an EdgeList23, or if you have a different format that you're using for a aggregator of your data, then you might select one of these other file formats. So this is a way of using the DL editor to both import and export your data depending on what you're doing. After you've loaded up a UCINET data file, you're going to just go ahead and display that. So this big D here, I can use to enter in the CampNet dataset, and then it's going to show me in Notepad what it's remembered about what I've entered in. So I can just take a look here and make sure that I have 18 rows and 18 columns. If I've entered in multiple relations, they're going to appear below, so I would just scroll down. But this is just a quick way of taking a look at what you've already entered and making sure it looks good. Some of these other icons that you see here, the colorful one is NetDraw. That's what you're going to use to visualize your data in UCINET, and I'm going to describe that in a later tutorial.